Murder or mercy? The jury forewoman's voice quavered slightly as she rose, the verdict form clutched in her trembling hands. Inside the hushed Nashville courtroom, 16-year-old Cyntoia Brown sat motionless, her expression unreadable. The air felt thick, oppressive, as if the fluorescent lights were pressing down on everyone present. Outside, August heat shimmered on the pavement, but inside, a different kind of heat was building. The scorching intensity of justice about to be pronounced. On the charge of first-degree murder, we find the defendant guilty. Detective Mark Stevens, seated near the back, exhaled slowly. Another case closed, another perpetrator facing consequences. So why did victory taste so bitter this time? Stevens had been first on the scene that morning in 2004, summoned to a suburban home where 43-year-old Johnny Allen lay face down on his bed, naked, a gunshot wound to the back of his head. The evidence had seemed straightforward. Allen's wallet empty, his guns missing, his truck gone, and Cyntoia Brown, caught with the stolen items, had confessed to pulling the trigger, open and shut, until it wasn't. 3 months later, Stevens sat in his darkened office, rain streaming down the windows as he reviewed his case notes for the 100th time. Something about the Brown case haunted him. Details that didn't align with the prosecution's narrative of a cold-blooded killing for profit. His phone rang, jarring him from his thoughts. "Stevens." His voice was gruff from too many cigarettes and too little sleep. "Detective, this is Dr. Kennedy from Youth Services." The psychiatrist's voice was hesitant. "I've been reviewing Cyntoia Brown's history for her sentencing report. There's something you should know." Stevens' pen hovered over his notepad. "I'm listening." Her neuropsychological evaluations show significant impairment consistent with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. Her biological mother drank throughout pregnancy. "Lots of kids have rough starts, Doctor. They don't all shoot people." "There's more." Kennedy paused. At the time of the incident, she was living with a 24-year-old man who went by Cutthroat. Our interviews strongly suggest he was sex trafficking her through physical and psychological coercion. Stephen's stomach tightened. "You're saying she was being prostituted?" "I'm saying a neurologically impaired child was being controlled through violence and forced into commercial sexual exploitation with adult men." The detective stared at the rain-streaked window, remembering the girl's statement. "I thought he was reaching for a gun. I thought he was going to kill me." Words he'd dismissed as a convenient fabrication. "Why are you telling me this now, Doctor? The trial's over." "Because something isn't right here. This case has been prosecuted as a robbery homicide, but the psychological evidence points to a traumatized trafficking victim who genuinely believed she was in danger." After hanging up, Stevens pulled out the crime scene photos, examining them with fresh eyes. Allen, ex-military, had shown Brown his gun collection earlier that evening. The victim's positioning, hands partially under the pillow. Could Brown have genuinely misinterpreted a sleeping man's movement? And why had the prosecution fought so hard to try her as an adult, pushing for the maximum sentence? The discovery came by accident. While testifying in an unrelated case, Stevens encountered a familiar face in the courthouse corridor, Assistant DA James Morgan, who had inexplicably recused himself from prosecuting Brown despite initially handling the case. "Hell of a job on the Hernandez testimony," Morgan offered, extending his hand. "Thanks." Stevens hesitated. "Can I ask why you stepped away from the Brown case? Seemed right up your alley." Morgan glanced around before responding. "Let's just say there were competing interests." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means Allen had connections. People who wanted things handled quietly and conclusively." Morgan looked uncomfortable. His activities with young girls had raised eyebrows before. The implication hit Stevens like a physical blow. You're saying the victim was known to law enforcement? Not officially, just whispers. Enough that some people wanted a quick conviction without too much examination of Allen's proclivities. For years following her conviction, Stevens kept tabs on Brown's case from a distance. He watched as she earned her GED and college degree behind bars, as advocates gradually rallied around her cause. In 2019, when Tennessee Governor Bill Haslam granted her clemency after she had served 15 years, Stevens attended the press conference anonymously. He observed the poised young woman who spoke of responsibility, growth, and her plans to help other trafficking victims. That evening, he left a small package at her attorney's office, all his case notes, including his conversations with Dr. Kennedy and Morgan, along with a letter detailing his growing conviction that justice had not been served. He never received a response, nor did he expect one. Some debts can't be repaid, some truths emerge too late to make a difference. But as he watched Brown's subsequent appearances advocating for criminal justice reform, he recognized that sometimes even the most flawed systems can produce unexpected redemption. What had begun as murder, or perhaps an act of desperate self-preservation, had transformed into something else entirely, a spotlight on America's failures to protect its most vulnerable children, justice and mercy. Sometimes the line between them isn't as clear as we might wish. Based on the real case of Cyntoia Brown, while incorporating fictional elements for narrative purposes. The character of Detective Stevens is fictional, though the core facts of Brown's case, conviction and eventual clemency are accurate.